sitting down and writing a novel makes you a much faster typer. So it certainly helped me out work-wise. I really just found that I had some free time, wanted to delve into my hobby, and 6 years later, all of a sudden, I felt like it might be a book.
From NCPR, welcome to Northwards. People, ideas, and conversations from and about Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Teich.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steiniger and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Community Foundation in support of the Adirondack Community Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities.
Ethan Chanty is with us. He's the producer of this here podcast.
This here show.
He joins us in the studio before the interview proper begins, and I have a couple of admissions to make to start off today's program. Okay. One is going to be shocking for a 57-year-old gentleman like myself. Mm-hmm. Recently 57.
Recently 57. How was your birthday?
I got a stomach virus on my birthday, so it was less than ideal.
It's the way I love to celebrate, too.
Enjoyed my rice and toast I had for dinner that night.
Lost a couple pounds.
I did.
Well,
starting off the new year right. So the admission I was going to make, which, again, surprising for a 57-year-old gentleman of high breeding like myself.
Is that some Scottish Shepherd I'm seeing there?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
your coat, very long.
Irish setter. No, I like the winter edition of Red Bull far more than I would have expected to.
Wow. Late breaking news here on the Northwards podcast. I don't know what our listeners will
I'm just saying that as an excuse if I sound a little bit too dynamic today.
I have not had, can I tell you my first, not my first energy drink story. Yes, it is, kind of. Okay. I don't drink energy drinks.
I don't usually either.
They would kill me. As you know, like I drink decaf coffee now. I can still have a soda, and that's fine. But for whatever reason, the caffeine content in coffee just sends me to the moon. I was dating
the caffeine content in coffee sends me to the bathroom. But anyway, you were dating a girl.
Zing. I was dating a girl who lived in Buffalo. She was doing some summer courses and an internship there. And I was here in Potsdam. I was, Raymondville, more accurately.
Everybody loves Raymondville.
Everybody loves Raymondville. That's what they said. They put that on the sign and then they got sued. Did
they really?
No.
Oh.
Come on. Nothing I say is true.
Nothing I say is true either. But that's just the kind of thing that could have happened.
This is true. I was working at Alcoa. They had like this summer program for children of employees, and basically it was glorified yard work. You would walk around with a weed whacker all day and then do various other non-dangerous things.
You will be feeding the blast furnace today. It's important to remember when feeding the blast furnace, do not stick your hands in the blast furnace.
So basically it was a really well-paid job. This was 2007 when I had this job and she was down there, and it paid like $20 an hour. So very, very, very good.
Yeah.
I made like $5,000 that summer, which was in like 2 months. Which is incredible. So anyway, I was dating this girl.
Whacked a lot of weeds.
I did. Painted a lot of paints. She was living in Buffalo. I was down. I was getting off of work at about 2:00 in the afternoon every day, which meant that I was awake. I was awake at 5 every single day. The Dark Knight had come out, so maybe this was 2008. I don't know. Whatever, doesn't matter. The Dark Knight had come out. I really wanted to see it, so I went to a midnight screening. I didn't get home until after 3 a.m. Went to bed, got up for 5 a.m. so I could go into work with my dad. Worked from 6 until 2. Got out of work, went home, took a shower, immediately got in the car. I stopped by the gas station to fill up, and I bought one of those 5-hour energy shots.
Those exist in 2008?
Mm-hmm,
yeah, I guess they did. Huh?
And by the time, it was the first time I ever got one, I was exhausted, as I'm sure you can imagine. By the time I got onto the highway proper, the energy drink wasn't doing a thing for me. So I thought, why don't I stop and buy another one? So I bought one of those Mountain Dew energy drinks, and that, Mitch, was my very first panic attack.
Oh, yes.
If I had looked into the rearview mirror, I would have seen nothing but my pupils just dilated like dinner plates.
Like a cartoon thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I was convinced that I was going to get pulled over, so I was sticking directly to 55 miles an hour. I was sweating and cold at the same time.
I don't know why I'm laughing so hard, but
It was the first and last time I made that mistake, and I swore off energy drinks pretty quickly thereafter.
I'm sure that it was the energy drink plus the sleep deprivation probably did you in there.
And I was really excited to see my girlfriend, and I passed out the second I got to her apartment. And I'm sure that was delightful for her. We're not together anymore, so. Okay, so you said you had many confessions.
So I said I had 2 confessions.
Okay, well.
And the first one was the Red Bull thing.
Okay.
And I could share my first Red Bull story.
Please.
And that was, and this is not part of the confession, but gosh, what year would this have been? It would have been about, I think it was 2003, 2004, perhaps. A friend of mine who lives in Australia and is involved in professional baseball in Australia, also is involved in the growing women's baseball movement.
Okay.
And he organized a 24-hour marathon baseball game among women's baseball players at a spring training stadium in Arizona. And at the time, I was living in Arizona, and he invited me down to be the streaming play-by-play voice of the 24-hour baseball
For
game.
how many? You didn't do all 24 hours?
I did not do all 24 hours. I did about 19 hours.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And a couple of significant things happened during that game, only one of which I will talk about right now, and that was at about 4 a.m., I had my first Red Bull. And it got me through like probably another 4 or 5 hours of announcing. And we had kind of a rotating cast of characters. Like I would announce a couple of innings as the play-by-play guy with somebody joining me as the color commentator. And then we would switch and they would be the play-by-play person and I would be the color commentator. And then somebody else would come in and we'd rotate through. But it was kind of amazing, actually.
At what point in the broadcast, now you're sleep deprived as well, did you start to see your colleagues turn into like cartoon hamburgers because of the delirium? Did that happen?
It was about inning number 23, I think. I am sure I was hallucinating by the end of it.
Definitely.
But it was a good time. The other admission, confession, or interesting story I was going to tell is based on something you and I were discussing over the Slack earlier.
Mr. T.
Mr. T, right.
Yeah, you look exactly like Mr. T.
Exactly. And that is why some of the neighbor kids, my kids' friends when we were living in Wisconsin, used to call me Mr. T.
Not because of your last name, but because of your penchant for large gold chains.
It was because of my last name and because they were not really familiar with who Mr. T actually was. And let me just say, when they finally found out and saw a picture of Mr. T, hilarity ensued.
They said, "You don't have a mohawk at all."
Anyway, I pity the fool who did not appreciate that story.
Mr. T was was he? Or am I thinking of Mike Tyson, who's also a Mr. T, now that I think about it?
That's true.
Was Mr. T a part? Yes. I was just reading, you're not a pro wrestling fan.
Not really.
Have you ever been to a pro wrestling event?
I've not been to a pro wrestling
It's
event.
amazing. It'll change your life. I'm serious. It's amazing. It's like it's just like a large theater production, except a lot sweatier.
Right, a lot sweatier and
A lot more steel chairs.
more chairs being wielded. Right, exactly.
I just read the autobiography of Bret the Hitman Hart. Do you know who he is?
I'm familiar. I know pro wrestling names.
You know
but
some of
yeah.
the cast of characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was really big.
Hulk Hogan's a big guy, right?
So Hulk Hogan is the person who fought Mr. T not only in Rocky III, but also in the ring in a WWF event when it was called WWF. Now it's WWE. He doesn't figure that prominently, but it was a really fascinating book. And honestly, I think it's like perfect for non-wrestling fans also, because you really learn to appreciate that wrestling is an art form that, again, there's a lot more blood and sweat and steel chairs than there are in like a stage production. But in many ways, it's pretty similar.
Well, and to get really heady in public radio for a minute here, from what I understand of it, he says, as an outside observer of cultural phenomena, one of the remarkable things is that wrestling sort of breaks down that fourth wall, right? And that the audience is really one of the characters in the drama.
They are an active participant, yes, and more so than a lot of other art forms, I think, because
more so than mime.
More so than mime, for sure. Yeah. I don't think that's too heady. I think that's spot on. As an outside observer, yeah, I think you're spot on about that. You're talking today not to a pro wrestler or a baseball player, a Red Bull aficionado, perhaps?
I have no idea whether she drinks Red Bull. I should have asked in the interview. But we're actually going to listen to an interview that I did for a series that I host for the Adirondack Experience, the museum at Blue Mountain Lake. And that is a series called In the Adirondack Library. And I had a chance to interview a first-time author, which is not something that we get to do all the time. First-time novelist, in fact. Her name is Jen Denny, and she lives in the Saranac Lake area. She has worked as a High Peaks Summit steward in the past and now works at Paul Smith's College. But her novel is called Calculated Risk. It is about a seasonal park ranger named Samantha who is at a crossroads in her life at the ripe old age of 25 and finds herself on an adventure in the high peaks during which some heavy thinking goes on and some heavy survival goes on. And she tells us a little bit more about what sparked the story in the beginning of our interview.
Yeah, so I visited the Adirondacks first as a really small child when I was 6 or 7, and I had no idea where my parents took me. But then later, as I was looking into colleges, I decided to go and check out Paul Smith's. My family was visiting the inlet area, and we just swung up to Paul Smith's College, and I checked it out. And of course, we went on a beautiful summer day. So it was hard to decide not to go to school there after having seen it. It has a beautiful campus. And I wanted to study environmental science with a focus on nature interpretation. And they do have the Visitor Interpretive Center there. So once all of the scholarships came through and I found out that it was actually reasonable for me to do that, it was where I absolutely wanted to go. And then my time spent here in the Adirondacks really gave me a sense for the Saranac Lake community. So I really enjoyed not only being on the Paul Smith College campus, but also getting out and going and exploring the high peaks and cross-country skiing on the Jackrabbit Trail and going, kayaking and canoeing in the St. Regis Canoe area. So I really just grew to love all the opportunities that this area presented and also the tight-knit nature of the friendships that I was building here. When I moved away, there was no place that felt quite like Saranac Lake, so I was happy to be able to come back.
I was just going to say there's something about the shared sort of community ethos that binds the place together. And it also sounds like your parents kind of at an early age really instilled a love for the outdoors in you.
Yeah, they did. We went to Letchworth State Park camping every single year, sometimes multiple times a year if we were lucky. And for me, that was my favorite part of the year. Some kids, they look forward to their birthday every year and Christmas every year. And of course, I look forward to those things too, but nothing was quite up there like going to Letchworth.
Walk us through the spark of inspiration that led you to sit down and I don't know whether you typed it or you hand wrote it in the first draft but what was the spark of inspiration that led to the novel that's in front of us?
Yeah, so ever since I was a teenager, I've really enjoyed creative writing. So there have been this kind of different parts of my personality where I like doing the outdoorsy stuff, but at the same time, creative writing has kind of just always been a hobby. And I kind of found myself rewriting the same story, but in different ways throughout all of my teenage years. And then I finally sat down as an adult with all these experiences in 2019 and started trying to put these characters into a story that would really feel like it was a satisfying way of telling the story that has been in me for all of this time. I was able to use all of those creative writing skills that I'd kind of developed over the years, but it also like had some really great benefits for my professional life. Like sitting down and writing a novel makes you a much faster typer. So, it certainly helped me out work-wise. I really just found that I had some free time, wanted to delve into my hobby, and 6 years later, all of a sudden, I felt like it might be a book.
You mentioned it started at while you were working at Great Camp Sagamore, is that right? Did any
Yeah,
of it come together like actually on the trail?
no. So, interestingly, my first draft was written in my head as I was traveling from Sagamore down to Cortland to recruit for our seasonal staff. I was going to a career fair down there, and I had a lot of miles ahead of me and a long time on the road. And I sort of wrote, I think, some of the later chapters. And I said, I gotta go sit down and put this down. And if anybody's familiar with Great Camp Sagamore, I was the program director there. So I had these really intense summer seasons where I was extremely busy from May to October. And then I would have some downtime between November and April while I was preparing for the next year. And essentially working from home gave me that free space to just kind of for my mind to spend time creating a story for Samantha Weathersfield.
Do you feel like at this point with this book sort of behind you or at least done and at the point where you're talking about it, are you kind of mentally compiling, are you doing character studies on people that you meet now?
Oh no, oh gosh. No, I don't do that. But the people who are in my life who are on this call will be relieved to know that I'm not doing that. Um, no, but I do find myself mentally thinking about what Samantha Weathersfield would be doing next. That is very much like the mental project that's going on now.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing I'm always curious about with people who have sort of, you haven't created a whole world because, you've put Samantha Weathersfield into this world that already exists, but
Mhm.
it sounds like for you, Samantha exists off the page just as strongly as she's represented on the page. You can't imagine her like doing the things that aren't necessarily in the book, but would, go into like someone's life.
Yeah, like there always has to be in the character development, and this is coming from somebody who is not a professional writer, except, that I've published a book, but
I think you get to call yourself a professional
I
writer
think
now.
I do now, and I still struggle with that. Anyway, I think that I needed to come up with some backstory to Samantha that wasn't written into the pages, so that then she would have the depth of a real person. So I had to know things about her past that were all fabrications of my memory, and things about her future, about where she might be headed in order to write that into the book. And there was times, I mean, I went through many rewrites. So I found myself digging through that information, trying to sometimes revise to fit what the new version of Sam is. Because as you think about it, from 2019 to 2024, the world changed a lot. So I found myself kind of trying to stick with the times.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like is this a coming of age novel in some ways?
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like Sam as a 25-year-old, I mean, she's fully living her life as an adult, but she's still trying to figure out where that leads and really making tough decisions without a clear next direction for the first time in her life.
Yeah, I definitely, as I was reading this, thought of my own life when I was 25,
Mhm.
and very similarly, I don't know about you when you were 25, but you are an adult, but it's sort of almost a proto-adulthood, where you're still like experiencing the adult things for the first time.
Yeah, I started writing this when I was 24, and at the time I was living with my now husband, and I worked at Great Camp Sagamore as the program director, and felt very settled and comfortable in where I was. I loved living here in the Adirondacks, but at the time, a lot of my friends were going through these changes where they were working seasonal jobs, which happens a lot when you work in environmental science or fisheries and wildlife. It's just naturally a part of the career progression is that you have to jump from one seasonal job to another. And some of them were feeling sort of rootless, like, where will I end up? Like, I want to take this next career step, but also at the same time, I have this long-term relationship that I want to nurture. And I also have these places that I've lived or I would like to live that feel really meaningful to me. So, kind of the existence at this crossroads, I think, is something that's really relevant to a lot of people. And I definitely came up with that based off of hearing a lot of my friends talk about trying to make those decisions at that time of life.
And I don't think this is giving away any spoilers here, but Sam is dealing with, first of all, a big question of where her next job is going to be and whether it's going to be in the Adirondacks, and also what's going to happen to her relationship.
Yeah, and I think gosh, I don't want to do any spoilers here, but I
Yeah.
think everybody here is telling her to get rid of her boyfriend. Like very early on, you're like, this guy is just weighing you down. But I think that that's the truth of being in that time of life where you're 25 and you're making this tough decision about like, do I want to stay with this person forever? Because that's where this is headed. And do I actually want this?
Adulthood is a long time.
Yes. So very much a coming of age novel.
How does this book differ from the version that was running through your head as you drove down to Cortland?
I wrote the end first. So the second to last chapter, which I love, where Sam finally decides to let her friend Kristen in on some of her challenges. She has this experience of being vulnerable, which is hard for her. And I wrote that, but I originally wrote it from Kristen's perspective, which was weird. I originally had three narrators. I gave Bill, her brother, sections that he narrated. I gave Kristen sections that she narrated. And then, of course, Sam was spattered throughout the book telling her story. I went to the writing festival in Saranac Lake probably 4 years ago now, and I asked them if they would read, if I could take advantage of one of the editor sessions where an editor reads this part of your book and tells you what they think about it. I got the advice that I should just pick one narrator. I was like, okay, it's got to be Sam then.
Would have
But
been hard to tell the story without it being Sam as the narrator.
it would have been a vastly different story. So, um, and along with that, I actually changed the flow of the story a little bit because there was interesting side stories that Bill and Kristen told about themselves that no longer needed to exist.
Mhm.
So, similar to Sam, I know a lot more about Bill and Kristen than the readers do because they originally were narrators as well. But I think that it was ultimately really good advice.
You mentioned that your favorite part to write, the part about Panther Gorge and the time at the lean-to. What was the hardest part for you to write? I mean, was there a part that you dreaded, knowing that Sam was at this point and then she still had to get to this point that you dreaded, filling in the gap?
Yeah, I think that one of the hardest parts was actually when when I had gone through the process of removing Bill as a narrator, I really had to go back and rework some of the early chapters, and that was hard for me to do. Like I originally did not include anything about them going boating together on Lake Placid. I had to rewrite that. Sam's drive through town to go pick up some whiskey, that didn't happen originally. So I kind of had to, it was early in the story and it was setting the scene. But I really had to force myself to go back and rewrite those parts because in my mind, the story was already told.
Yeah.
But I needed to go and make sure that I was providing the details that readers needed. So those parts were a little bit harder for me to get to.
How did the process of publishing play out for you?
Oh, that's a great question. So actually at the writing festival, I met Beth from High Peaks Publishing. And at the time, I just listened to a presentation, introduced myself at the end, but I kept the name of their organization kind of in the back of my mind. So then later, I reached a point sometime in maybe 2024, yeah, end of 2024, where I was thinking, gosh, I've taken this book as far as I can myself. Like I had had a couple of friends proofread it, but they weren't professional editors. So I really needed somebody with editing experience. And I reached out to High Peaks Publishing and I asked if they would give it a read. They said, "Yeah, we'll give it a read and we'll give you our professional opinions on it for $100." I was like, "Sweet, good deal. I've been looking for somebody with this expertise." So I sent it over to Beth and Tim, and they read it and gave me phenomenal feedback. both of them read it, and they ultimately gave me huge improvements on the very beginning of the book. They told me to add another chapter. The whole first chapter was something that they told me that I needed, and then they also had me adjust the ending just a little bit to make it a little sweeter. And those two things made me just love them. So, um, I decided that I wanted to self-publish. After I had actually reached out to a number of other publishers, but I was getting the same feedback from all of them, which was that they do not accept work from unpublished authors. I was like, how do you get published if nobody accepts work from unpublished authors?
Catch 22.
Yes, but then I realized that the path to that was self-publishing. Luckily, High Peaks Publishing had a wealth of experience. Beth and Tim are awesome, and they helped me to make a really professional looking book. They came up with the artwork with a lot of commentary from me and asked me for various different details, like what kind of font we would want to use and what size book, so that it would suit what I had in mind.
Well,
All in
and
all,
remarkable that you thought about like the size of the book easily fitting into a backpack for an extended hike into the Adirondacks.
yeah, that was important to me. Like I had spent so much time backpacking as a High Peak Summit steward that I kind of knew what kind of size book fits best.
Was it hard for you to write a character who was making occasionally bad choices, knowing that you would have done things differently?
Hindsight is 2020. It's tough because yeah, I'm sure if you're somebody who likes to hike in the Adirondacks, you may have had an experience where you set out on a trail and you didn't bring your snowshoes. And then you get halfway to your destination and you realize that there's 4 feet of snow there. And so you're sort of faced with this, do I turn around? Am I going to get in trouble if I keep going? Like kind of decision making. And like that soft skill decision making is really something that we all have to work on building. We don't naturally get born with those hard or with those soft skills. And it's hard to just learn them like you do hard skills. Like you can learn how to use your snowshoes and fill your backpack, but the soft skill decision making is something that you grow into over the course of many trips into the outdoors. For that, I think a lot of us have to make mistakes along the way in order to do that. So, even though me, hindsight 2020, I'm writing stuff going, this is not what I would have done in this situation. Maybe I would have. You never know.
Given a surprise snowstorm, given cold, wet clothes, and yeah, who knows? You mentioned that you have worked as a High Peaks Summit steward, and for folks who aren't familiar, what is the work of a summit steward?
Yeah, that's a great question. So High Peak Summit stewards work to protect the Arctic alpine plants that grow on the summits of our highest peaks, like Marcy, Algonquin, Wright, and Cascade. And the plants up there are well adapted to high winds. The winds can blow, over 100 miles an hour. They see hurricane force winds every month of the year. They the plants up there can survive extreme cold temperatures. The average yearly summit temperature is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's the average for the entire year. And the plants up there survive lots of ice and snowpack. However, they are not well adapted to people's feet. So high peak summit stewards work up there on the summits, asking hikers to walk only on the solid rocks, and that helps us to protect the Arctic alpine plants, which are rare, endangered, and really fragile, as I mentioned.
So you basically hoof it up to the summit, and then you're there waiting for people to arrive and just providing education.
Yes, exactly. It's fully an educational role. Summit stewards are not there to enforce the laws like a forest ranger. They're there to provide additional information, though. So if you go up to the summit and you ask the summit steward, "Hey, can you identify that high peak for me?" They will be thrilled to do that. Love doing that. Also, summit stewards participate in alpine ecosystem research. So they do something called Mountain Watch, where they keep track of the different times that plants are blooming and seeding, past bloom, those kinds of things. And also doing photo point monitoring, which involves taking the same pictures of the same sections of the Arctic Alpine Zone year after year to see how the plant cover is changing. And I've had a lot of experiences with the photo point monitoring because of the years that I was a summit steward. So I really enjoyed participating in that research.
How does your enjoyment of the Adirondacks as either a volunteer steward or just a hiker differ from when you're on the job?
When I'm volunteering as a summit steward, there's not a heck of a lot of difference from when I was a full-time paid steward. I still go about things the same way, but it is tough when I'm just a layperson. And my husband's often complaining that I don't need to stop and talk to every hiker when we're just out having fun because I will pass people on the trail and say, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" And they'll say something like, "Do you know how far it is to here?" And I'll be like, "Yes, in fact, I do." Let's chat about that.
So
So
there's really no point at which you're just a hiker.
yeah, except occasionally I'm reminding myself that I don't have to deal. Like I see somebody that is doing something wrong, and I'm like, okay, I don't have to correct that. I don't have to worry about what that person's doing right now. I don't have to go have a conversation with them about this. I'm just gonna let them do their thing.
Because we do see the contrast. I mean, it's one of the things that Sam thinks about as she's hiking, the ability to be out in the woods, and her mind is her own. She's not constantly thinking about is she going to have to rescue a hiker with a broken ankle or whatever. She actually has the luxury of being able to be in her own mind.
Yeah, she really looks forward to that freedom at the end of the season to be able to just walk and enjoy without being worried about being interrupted by the crackling radio. And I can definitely relate to that when you are up there on the summit, you're constantly on. Like for me as a summit steward, if I hear footsteps coming up the peak, I immediately look around to see where the person is so that I can go and introduce myself. Whereas if I'm just there quietly on my own, I can enjoy just kind of looking at the view and the other people are unimportant.
What is your advice for someone who has always wanted to write a book but never feels like they have the time?
Yeah, so honestly, I have the same problem right now because I have a 15-month-old and I wrote this before that. So it is hard to do. My recommendation would be to set aside one of those cold rainy days and write the things that are already in your head. So if you've spent some time, like while you're out on a road trip, sit down and take what is already in your mind and just put it on a page. Don't worry about the quality, just get it down. Even if it's not the beginning of the story, if it's something in the middle of the story, just write whatever's in the middle of the story. From there, I would say don't stop writing when you run out of things to think about. Quit while you still know where you're going. So, for example, if I was, planning on writing about, Sam's ascent of Haystack, I might stop while she's on her way up Haystack, knowing that she's gonna go up Haystack. So then I'll have a lot more momentum when I go and sit back down to continue writing later because I already know what my first step is to get back into it. I wrote the second to last chapter first because that was what I was most excited to write about. So it does not have to go in a particular order.
Did you go back and fact check much of the hiking sections of this book?
Everything. Yeah. I had a High Peaks map spread out in front of me the whole time that I was writing so that I could make sure that trail distances and junctions were accurate and not just going off of my own memories. But there was a few places in here that I went back and revisited as I was writing the book. Panther Gorge being one of them. But I also wanted to go and I also climbed Lower Wolfjaw and did a little bit of that loop over to Marcy as well because that wasn't as familiar to me either. So yeah, I really enjoyed getting to do that rehiking part.
What are some of the other books out there that you've read that you've either connected with for similar reasons to what attracts you to the outdoors, or had issues with because they don't hit the mark?
Yeah, so two that I wanted to pull out. Here's one that's called Girl in the Woods by Aspen Mattis. And it's really similar to Wild by Cheryl Strayed. If you liked that, you'll probably like this. But it's a really similar type of character. I also,
Nonfiction as well.
yeah, nonfiction.
Yeah, yeah, nonfiction and like Cheryl Strayed.
Yeah, it's a true life coming of age story about
Okay.
herself. And then here is, it's so funny. I love reading fiction, but I pulled out two nonfiction books for you. This one is called Where You'll Find Me, and it's about the last climb of this woman named Kate Matrasova,
Hmm.
and it takes place in New Hampshire's White Mountains. So the backstory is that Kate Matrasova was a really experienced mountaineer who decided that she was going to climb the presidentials dressed really lightly on a really, really cold day in February. And she basically set off her beacon at a point when she probably knew that she was dying. But the title of the book comes Where You'll Find Me because she probably knew that she was just telling them where she was going to find her body. But the story that goes with this book is where the author kind of breaks down all of the decisions and risks that she was taking that might have come into taking this really experienced outdoors person and putting them into that situation. So it's really a cautionary tale, but I liked it for the discussion on soft skills that surround hiking.
Well, and risk finds its way into the subtitle of Where You'll Find Me, and that brings us to the question that you have not addressed, which is why did you choose to call this book Calculated Risk?
So there was so many risks that Sam takes, but really the important part about it is that all of the risks that she takes are calculated. Like as she heads out to go into the Adirondack backcountry by herself, she fully acknowledges that she's doing this solo, even though she wanted to find a buddy to go with her. Uh, but she makes sure that she packs the right things or what she thinks are the right things, even though she neglected to bring her snowshoes. And she makes sure that she has a formal plan for her hike. She leaves the plan with her boyfriend. She's traveling areas that she knows from before. So her risk, even though it exists, and to other people it might be much riskier, to Sam it's truly calculated. Also, at the same time, I was thinking that a lot of the risks that we take in life, like her deciding that she was going to go on to, consider possibly other careers outside of just being a forest ranger, would be a calculated risk for her. She knows that she has these other passions and where her expertise lies, but it's ultimately a calculated risk.
I just want to say, Jen Denny, I really enjoyed the book and truly enjoyed the chance to get to chat with you about it. I hope folks take the time to go and find a copy for themselves, and we'll be waiting to find out what Sam's up to next.
Thank you so much for supporting it. I really appreciate that it's out there in your hands.
That's Jennifer, or Jen Denny, the author of the new novel Calculated Risk, published by High Peaks Publishing. I spoke with her as part of the In the Adirondack Library series for the Adirondack Experience, the museum at Blue Mountain Lake. You can watch the entire interview from a link at ncpr.org/northwards.
One of the big reasons, and this will bring us back to the conversation at the start of the show about Australian baseball. One of the big reasons, you'll like this, one of the big reasons that I do not consider myself an outdoor cat is because I don't like bugs. And in particular, I do not like spiders. And if you've been outside, you'll know, Mitch.
There are a lot of spiders out there.
There's a lot of spiders out there. I know this band who recently went on a tour to Australia. Australia is famous for their big insects, in particular their big spiders.
Also Vegemite.
Vegemite sandwiches. Vegemite very salty. Don't like it.
Yeast extract.
Just what the doctor ordered. Yeah. And they posted a video of their travels in Australia, and they had cornered a spider in the bathroom. And they posted this video on Instagram, and all of them are screaming and carrying on and going, "We can't sleep here tonight if this thing is roaming around." And I don't blame them because this thing was like the size of a dinner plate. Have you ever seen a spider that big?
Not in person.
Well, Mitch,
I can imagine. I've seen a spider the size of a very small dinner plate. How's that?
For today's final act, I've brought out a giant spider the
And
size of a
we've
dinner
invited
plate.
the spider to join us.
He's going to speak on climate change today.
And it's going to say, sorry, I was looking for just the right Little Miss Muffet reference to make.
She's here too.
She's
Come on
here.
in.
This is your life, Little Miss Muffet. Little Miss Muppet.
Don't like spiders.
More energy drink. Ethan, before I vibrate out of the studio, tell us who produces this program.
Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, produced, and edited by Mitch Tyke with digital production supervision by me. I'm Ethan Shanty. Bill Hanel is our digital director. Caitlin Kelly handles our social media, and our theme music is by the Wickmore Jazz Trio of Plattsburgh. To hear more conversations and to support this show, visit ncpr.org/northwards. This is NCPR North Country Public Radio.
You know what flavor the winter Red Bull edition is supposed to be?
Spider.
No, it's actually Fuji apple and ginger, and they have done an amazing job of making it taste like that.
Am I crazy, or I haven't had a Red Bull in about 20 years. Does Red Bull taste like crushed up sweet tarts?
Not this flavor. My 17-year-old son, who is a connoisseur of Red Bull, as 17-year-old boys are wont to be, divides the Red Bulls up into Red Bulls he can drink and Red Bulls that taste like crushed up sweet tarts.